Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge sponsored by Redloft and Hill Group. Now, the government wants to get 1.5 million new homes built, and its key delivery arm in delivering that national ambition is local government, either as the planning authority or as a joint venture partner, or directly delivering new homes. So I've come to Cambridge to understand a little bit better about what works and what needs to change in order to get councils to build more homes. And one of the key challenges that councils face in doing that is retaining its talent, its housing delivery talent. So I'm here to talk to Ben Binns, Assistant Director for Development at Cambridge City Council, about his career and how to sustain and build a career in public sector housing delivery. So Ben, can you kick us off by explaining how you got into it in the first place? How did your career start?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually in education and left that and set up my own business. And then I did an MBA in sustainability at University of East Anglia and got into the built environment that way and happened to start consulting on housing and sustainability. And it just gripped me, everything about it, especially council housing and placemaking. So that was about 15 years ago when I first got into it. And since then, I've worked with various different councils as a consultant or as an employed officer.
So you were running your own business, you had all that freedom, you had the sort of profit motive and building an empire and all of those dreams. Why did you come into the public sector?
Well, I wake up, I like to do good.
Yep.
Now, whether that's social good, environmental good, that's what motivates me. And the thing about housing and regeneration, there's so much good you can do, whether that's getting people into a better home, whether it's improving homes, whether it's improving sustainability standards, it's improving people's lives.
Okay. So can you describe your role at Cambridge City Council?
Sure. Yeah, so my role is I run a development team. I have a team of about 14 people, and we've got a number of projects, predominantly with our investment partnership, which is with Hill, some direct delivery, and we also purchased some 106 sites, but we've got a target to deliver about 1,000 homes by 2030.
Can I just stop you and ask, so when you say purchase some 106 sites, that's Section 106 is an agreement between developer and the council.
That's right.
To deliver a certain amount of affordable housing within an overall scheme, and the council is buying those houses from that developer in order to be able to nominate who gets to live in them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there aren't many of those in Cambridge, in the Cambridge boundary. So most of our delivery is done through our investment partnership.
Yeah.
And so my team do a number of different roles. They could be involved in rehousing, people who have to move out because of a redevelopment. Some are project managers who are ensuring that the council side of the partnership needs are met, whether that's employers' requirements, whether that's involvement with community centres, or involvement with the community more generally, or whether it's about communication overall. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see at the front end of development.
And what do you like best about all of that? What's the most sort of fulfilling aspect of your job?
I think the most fulfilling aspect is when you get the occasional success stories. And because you have to be resilient in development, and I say that to my team. Got to wake up, be resilient. There's always setbacks, whether it's planning or whether there's the issues below ground or whether there are some community issues that we've got to sit down and resolve. And you've got to celebrate every bit of success there, whether it's someone so grateful to move into a new home, or whether we finally got through to planning and planning approval, or whether we've handed over a site. And celebrating those successes is really important.
What about the flip side of that coin? What's toughest? What keeps you awake at night?
Well,
most?
What keeps me awake at night is always finances. How do we balance the books? How do we make sure things are viable, the developments are viable? Is my team happy? You've got to really focus on retention, and that means a happy team. Have they got enough to do? Are they fulfilled by what they're doing? So there are challenges, and there's political challenges as well.
Yeah.
And through the electoral cycle, you've got to work through some of the political challenges that come with that, whether people are opposed to development or people might want more development, but we're constrained by finances.
Yeah. So what sort of skills do you think you've developed during your career that enable you to fulfill that role? What are the most important skills?
It's really down to people skills.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you've got to be able to get on with lots of different people, whether in the council or outside the council, with lots of different backgrounds.
Is that a talent or a skill? I mean, can you learn to do that, or do you just have to be that kind of person?
I think that's a really good question. I think you can learn some skills around it, but you've got to like people, you've got to be curious. And I think in development, a lot of it's about curiosity. You're going, I wonder about that bit of land. I wonder who owns that. What could we build on there? What would that be good for? So a lot of it's about curiosity. A lot of it.
And I guess the same in what you were talking about in dealing with members, for example. Like, what is it they're trying to achieve? Where have they come from? What is it that drives them, and how can I help fulfil some of that?
And you need to understand their motivations, absolutely, and whether it's political or community-based, or whether it's something that they're campaigning on. It's really important to understand that background. Every little bit of detail helps, and how they like to communicate.
Yeah.
So some people like the face-to-face, some people are quite happy with a phone call or Teams meeting, but how you communicate with various different groups, particularly the politicians, is really important.
And that seems like quite a transferable skill. I mean, you've learnt that during your role at Cambridge City Council, but that's actually something that will stand you in good stead in any career, I guess.
There's so many skills in development, whether that's communication skills, resilience is another one. You're constantly dusting yourself down, picking yourself up and working on to the next scheme. You've got to have flexibility and agility. How are we going to get around this blockage? How do we deal with that? So there's lots of transferable skills in development and working for the council. And
when you look back at your career to this point now, and you look at the sort of arc of it, the pace of it, how does that compare with friends and contemporaries of yours in other sectors, in other careers entirely?
I would say I've had a far more interesting career.
Okay.
I've worked for lots of different councils and got a lot of different learning experience from every single council I've worked at. And in terms of my career projection, it's done very well, and I hope to continue to do very well. A lot of people tend to stay in one place for a long time. I like learning new things and being able to see what I can learn from every place I go to. And I think that's really important because, councils are so diverse, local government's so diverse, different types of local government, different type of political structures are in place. So understanding how that all works is really important.
And in terms of that learning, I mean, has mentoring played much of a role in your career development? And how do you kind of find mentors, and who have they been?
Well, the interesting thing I've learned, and I wish I'd learned it earlier in my career, is, it doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are, always get a mentor. And that could be someone in your team. So I've got someone in my team who's been through years and years and years of local government. And so every now and again I go, how are we going to deal with this? What's your take on this? So you can learn from people in your team. You can learn from someone who's right at the top. And I've learned, many great things from and been mentored really well from that. But also people outside. That learning must never stop. And that guidance and mentoring. Don't be afraid to ask questions. How would you do this? How do I navigate this? Because people love to tell you.
Well, name names then. So who's the biggest influence on your career?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I mean, I think that I was lucky enough to be mentored by Stephen Kelly, who's Director of Planning at Cambridge City Council. My ex-boss, Claire Flowers, is also a great mentor. She's gone on to Potter Raper Partnership. But sometimes it's just a place that you learn from. I mean, I remember getting a role as a consultant with London Borough of Waltham Forest, and that really changed my outlook on how you deal with development.
How?
Well, it's an incredibly urban environment. It's incredibly diverse in terms of people, but also in terms of architecture.
Yeah.
And suddenly you haven't got a greenfield site. You're dealing with busy roads, you're dealing with all sorts of challenges, underground and so on, with people on the site. So it just opened my eyes to the challenges of an urban environment and a real regeneration environment.
What single piece of advice would you have for a future housing leader?
I would say that get a mentor as soon as you can if you're ambitious, number one. Number two, don't be afraid to learn from other councils or registered providers. Go out and see what they do. People are more than happy to sell or tell you their story and explain what they do. And there's not enough of that, I don't think. Okay. And I would certainly encourage that. Try and get experience from different councils or different RPs. You've got that different background if you want to get on in your career, because I think that's really important. If you're mainly in greenfield sites, get experience in urban regen.
Yeah.
Likewise, urban regen, get experience on fringe sites. I think all of that paints a picture. All of that gives you just a bit more experience in dealing with the various challenges that get thrown up.
Yeah, because it's not, if you go and work in a rural authority, it's not that that's where you're going to end up. You're always going to be in a rural authority. You learn things there that you can then bring to an urban authority.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, although the site might be different, the community engagement might be very similar, or the need to engage with the community might be very similar, or the politics may be similar. So I think, you know, you've got to understand every aspect of development is something you can carry forward into your next role, but be aware of the diversity of development, the political diversity, the diversity of the communities, and the diversity of sites.
You talked earlier about celebrating success and the importance of doing that. So what is your greatest success? What are you most proud of achieving?
I'm proud of lots of things. I'm most proud of my team. We've gone through a really tough year this year, where we've worked really hard, and we aim to get 6 planning submissions this year. Okay. And we've got 4, and 2 are just about to go through early next year. So we've done really well in that. It was a tough target. We've also had a really difficult regen site, Eakin Road, which, you know, 100 people living there on site. How do you convince them that this is a good idea to regenerate? That was a really important success for the team to get that through to committee. How did
you do that?
Well, lots of hard work, lots of communication with residents, lots of putting forward a case for redevelopment.
Rather than retrofit, for example.
Well, that's right. So in order to put the case forward for redevelopment, we employed consultants to help us understand, well, if we did retrofit, what would be the cost, what would be the benefit? If we developed half the site, all of the site, what would be the pros and cons of each of it, and also the impact on the community. So it's a very open and transparent report, and we talked to the community about it and why we were doing it. And in the end, the committee, the politicians voted for redevelopment of the site. And but it was a tough process, and you've got to face people head on in order to do that. I say to my team, we will be going door knocking to explain our case. We are knocking on sites, and that's hard. Because sometimes there's people who really don't want to talk to you or don't want to see redevelopment. But you've got to make the case, particularly if you're moving people out of their homes.
We've talked about success and we've talked about your proudest achievement. What remains undone? What do you most want to get done during the rest of your career?
That's a really tough and hard question. I mean, I'd like to... The thing about regeneration is that you are on a journey, and sometimes you don't have the full journey, because you might inherit a team, or you might inherit sites, or you might start the strategy, but you don't see the end of it. I would love to be able to join a team and build up a team and start the journey from A to B and say, right, we did this collectively all the way through on a really big regen site.
Ben, I wish you luck in achieving that. Until then, thank you very much indeed for joining 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
That's it for another episode of 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge, sponsored by Redloft and Hill Group. We're going to be back with another episode later this month. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this one. And if you like what we're doing, do click like or subscribe. Thank you very much.